My name is Rachel Nguyen, and I'm 34 years old. 11 years ago, my own brother handed me a box of my belongings, changed the locks on the house we'd inherited together, and told me I was nothing without the family name. Today, he's standing in the lobby of Meridian Capital Partners, the firm I built from a folding table in a studio apartment, asking security to let him through because he claims to be my business partner. He's wearing the same kind of confident smirk he always wore when he thought he'd already won. He has no idea what's waiting for him on the 24th floor. Before I tell you what happens next, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this story speaks to something you've lived through. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know how far this reaches. Here's what happened when 11 years of silence finally broke. Let me take you back to the week after my father's funeral. I was 23 years old, sitting in a lawyer's office in downtown Austin, still wearing the black dress I'd worn to the burial the day before. My father had built Nguyen hardware supply from a single warehouse into a regional distribution company worth just over $4 million. He'd immigrated from Vietnam with $40 and a list of 3 contacts. He used all 3. He'd told me since I was 12 that the company would belong to both of us, his son and his daughter, equal partners, equal weight. The will confirmed it. 50-50 split. The lawyer read it clearly. My brother didn't look at me once during the reading. His name was Daniel, 4 years older, the one our father had taken on sales calls since he was 16. He knew every client by their first name, their wife's name, their kids' names. He was charming in the way that hides teeth. I'd grown up watching him and learning that the charm was a tool, nothing more. I had gone to UT Austin, studied finance, come back to help modernize the company's systems. I'd rebuilt the entire inventory software. I'd negotiated 2 new supplier contracts. My father had been proud. He'd said so often and never when Daniel was in the room. 3 weeks after the funeral, Daniel called a meeting. He sat across from me at our father's desk, the one with the scratched surface from decades of invoices and coffee cups, and he slid a document across to me. "I've had the lawyers restructure things," he said. "It's better this way. Cleaner." The document proposed a buyout. He'd assume full operational control. I'd receive a one-time payment of $200,000 and relinquish all rights to the company, all future earnings, all decision-making authority. Permanently. "This is a third of what my half is worth," I said. "It's what the business can afford right now," he said. "Liquidity issues, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I had built the financial model. There were no liquidity issues. "I'm not signing this," I told him. He leaned back. "Dad wanted me running this company. You know that. I know that. The will was just him trying to keep the peace." He said it out loud to me, Daniel. 50-50. He said a lot of things. His voice didn't change. That was the most frightening part. No anger, no guilt. Just calculation. Sign the papers or this gets complicated. I didn't sign, so it got complicated. Within the month, he'd quietly removed my name from the operating accounts. He told the staff I was on extended leave. He'd emailed our 2 largest clients, copying our suppliers, suggesting that I had decided to pursue other opportunities and that all communication should go through him. He moved fast and he moved quietly, the way he always had, and by the time I understood the full shape of what he'd done, it was already mostly done. The morning I came into the office and found my keycard deactivated, there was a box sitting outside the door. My coffee mug, my framed photo of my father and me at my college graduation. A cactus I'd kept on the windowsill for 2 years. He'd packed it neatly, the way you'd return something borrowed. There was a note. "This is better for everyone. Don't make it a thing." I drove to my apartment and sat on the floor of my kitchen for a long time. I had a finance degree, a hollowed-out savings account from the years I'd taken a below-market salary because the company was family, and a cactus. I had no job. I had a legal claim that I couldn't afford to pursue. I had a brother who had just reminded me that preparation beats sentiment every single time. I didn't eat dinner that night. I went through my phone and realized that almost every professional contact I had was connected to Nguyen hardware in some way. He'd thought of that too. I could see it in how quickly the emails had gone out, how coordinated the whole thing was. This had been planned before my father's body was cold. The next morning, I applied for 43 jobs. I got one call back. A small financial advisory firm in South Austin. The kind of place that operated out of a converted Victorian house with mismatched chairs in the waiting room and a receptionist named Carl who also made the coffee. The owner was a woman named Margaret O.C. She was 61, Ghanaian American, and she had been running the firm for 22 years without ever once making a list or winning an award because she had no interest in lists or awards. She was interested in whether the numbers told the truth. She interviewed me for 45 minutes. She asked me to walk her through the supplier renegotiation I'd done at Nguyen Hardware. I walked her through it. She asked me one follow-up question. Then she said, "You did that at 22. I said yes. She said, "When can you start?" I started the next Monday. Margaret was not a warm person in the conventional sense. She didn't ask about my family or make small talk over lunch. What she did was treat me like someone whose opinion was worth hearing. She would drop a balance sheet on my desk and say, "Tell me what's wrong with this," the way another person might say good morning. The first time I found the irregularity in a client's cash flow projection that her senior analyst had missed, she looked at my markup, looked at me, and said, "Good, now write the memo." I wrote the memo. I stayed late. I came in on Saturdays. I took on clients she was going to turn away because their accounts were small and complex. I treated those small, complex accounts like they were the only thing that mattered, because at the time they were the only thing that mattered, because at the time they were. I built models in my apartment at midnight. I called clients back within the hour, every time without exception. Within 2 years, I had tripled the firm's client retention rate and brought in 4 new accounts. Margaret gave me a raise I hadn't asked for and left the check on my desk without saying anything about it. One afternoon, she called me into her office and said she'd been thinking about retirement. She was 63. Her daughter was in Portland. She'd been thinking about it for a while. "I want you to buy me out," she said. "I'll give you a good price. Better than fair. The condition is that you keep Carl." I told her I didn't have the capital. "I know," she said. "I've already spoken to 2 people who do. They want to meet you." She'd been preparing for this. I understood that later, that Margaret, like the best people I would ever know, was always 5 steps ahead. Not out of strategy, but out of genuine methodical care. She'd been watching me for 2 years and making quiet phone calls. Those 2 people were early investors. I bought Margaret out at 31. I renamed the firm Meridian Capital Partners. We moved into a real office, one with an elevator and a glass-front conference room, the year I turned 32. By my 34th birthday we had 14 employees, 68 clients, and assets under advisement of just under $40 million. That was when the article ran. Austin Business Journal. A profile of emerging financial advisory firms disrupting the regional wealth management space. A photo of me at my desk. My full name. My company's full name. My father's name in the 4th paragraph. The way family always finds its way into stories about success. My phone buzzed 2 days later. Unknown number. The voicemail was my brother's voice. Polished and careful, the voice he used with clients. "Rachel. Hey. It's Daniel. I saw the article. You've done something really impressive and I think it's time we talked. There's a lot of water under the bridge, and I think Dad would have wanted us to move past it. Call me back." Dad would have wanted. I sat with that for a long time. I didn't call back. An email arrived at my company's contact address the next morning. Sent from Nguyen Hardware Supplies domain. It was formal. It referenced shared family equity and potential synergies, and an opportunity to reconnect professionally and personally. It was signed by Daniel and CC'd to someone named Marcus Webb, an attorney I didn't recognize. My operations director knocked on my office door. "There's a voicemail from someone named Daniel Nguyen claiming to be your business partner," she said carefully. He's not, I said. Please flag any further contact. He sent a LinkedIn request. He sent a card to my office. An actual card, cream-colored, fixed stock, handwritten inside. I know I handled things badly. I hope you'll give me a chance to make it right. Family is everything. My assistant left it on my desk with a question mark written on a post-it. I put it in the bottom drawer. Then my business partner, a man named James Okafor, who handled our compliance and legal architecture, and who also happened to have gotten his JD from Harvard, put a folder on my desk and said, "You should read this." It was a printout of a conversation thread from a private equity forum Daniel had posted under a slightly altered username, asking about the process of establishing a claim on a family-founded business when one sibling had been bought out years ago, and the other had grown the brand significantly, using the original company's reputation and client network. He was building a legal theory. He was going to argue that Meridian's success was built on the foundation of Nguyen Hardware's reputation and that he was owed a share. "That's almost impressive," James said, in a delusional way. "He's been planning this," I said. "For how long do you think?" I thought about the article, the photo, my father's name in the fourth paragraph. "Since the article." "Good," James said, which surprised me. "Good. Public forum post from an identifiable account is documentation. Keep reading." There was more. James had found, through entirely legal means involving a mutual contact in the Austin business community, that Daniel had also reached out to two of my original clients I had brought to Margaret's firm before Meridian existed, suggesting that there were ownership questions surrounding the company, and that they might want to seek independent counsel before their next contract renewal. He was going for the clients. I called James that night. He picked up on the first ring. "He's coordinating," I said. "The legal angle and the client angle at the same time." "Yes." "Can he actually claim anything?" "No. The buyout you signed at Nguyen Hardware was airtight, actually, because you didn't sign his version. The version in your father's will was executed by the estate attorney. The company passed to you equally, and you left voluntarily after he made the working environment untenable. You received nothing. That means you gave up nothing. There is no paper trail of you accepting a buyout, because you never accepted one. He told everyone I accepted it. He told everyone. He did not document it, because he didn't think he needed to. He thought you'd disappear." James paused. "Margaret kept records of everything, including the circumstances under which you came to her." Margaret had given James a notarized statement unprompted when she heard what was happening. She'd faxed it. She was the only person I knew who still used a fax machine. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the morning with the box outside the door, the cactus, my father's photograph, the note that said, "Don't make it a thing." I thought about the clients who might be getting calls right now, being told that Meridian's foundation was questionable, that I was questionable. I thought about my 14 employees, Carl, who still made the coffee and now also managed vendor relations, the 3 junior analysts who had turned down other offers to stay with us. I sat in my kitchen in the dark, and I thought about my father, who had trusted both of us, who had written it down, who had believed that putting it in a document would make it real and permanent and safe. The next morning, I called James. "The investor conference," I said. "The one in 3 weeks, the regional one." "The Austin Capital Forum," he said. "Daniel's company applied to present. I saw it on the attendee list last month." A pause. "You want him there?" "I want him in the room." We sent him an invitation. Meridian Capital Partners, written on our letterhead, signed by me. Formal, gracious. An invitation to attend the Austin Capital Forum as a guest of the firm, with complimentary registration to reconnect and discuss opportunities. We CC'd Marcus Webb, his attorney. James also sent a separate, private letter to Marcus Webb directly. It was 2 pages. It outlined, methodically, the documentary record of everything: the will, Daniel's unilateral account changes, the email to clients, the LinkedIn post, the calls to Meridian's existing clients. The letter closed with a simple statement: that we were prepared to file for tortious interference and business defamation if contact with Meridian's clients continued, and that any claim of business partnership or shared equity would be met with a full documentary record in open court. Marcus Webb called James the next morning. The client call stopped that day. But Daniel RSVP'd yes to the conference within the hour. The Austin Capital Forum was held at the Fairmont on Congress Avenue. 240 attendees, founders, investors, advisors, the kind of people who read deal flow memos over breakfast. Meridian was a presenting sponsor. My name was on the program. My photo was on the banner in the lobby. I saw my brother come through the registration doors at 8:47 in the morning. He was dressed well. He always dressed well. He brought Marcus Webb with him, and a woman I didn't recognize who carried a leather portfolio and looked like she was there to take notes. He scanned the lobby, found me near the registration table, and his face shifted through three expressions very quickly: surprise at how established the whole thing looked, recalibration, and then the smile. "The one with teeth." "Rachel," he said, walking toward me with his arms slightly open, the posture of a man who expects to be embraced. "I'm glad you came," I said. I did not close the distance. He glanced at the banner with my photo. "This is incredible. Seriously, I always knew you had it in you." "You have a seat reserved at table 6, I said. "James will be joining you shortly. Can I get you a coffee?" He wanted to say something, but the lobby was full of people who knew my name, so he said, "Sure, absolutely," and followed the staff coordinator I'd positioned nearby to walk him to his seat. I gave the opening remarks at 9. I talked about Meridian's founding, about Margaret, about what it meant to build something from a foundation of genuine trust with clients. I talked about my father by name, Nguyen, who came here with $40 and a list of 3 contacts and used all 3. And I watched my brother at table 6 smile the way people smile at a story they're planning to use. The keynote went smoothly. During the mid-morning break, I watched James walk over to table 6 with a folder. I had told James to give him 30 minutes with the documents before the panel. The panel was the second half of the morning. 4 presenters, 2 portfolio managers, a founder, and me. The moderator opened with a question about building trust in early-stage client relationships. When it came to my turn, I said, "Trust in this industry is built on one thing, the record. What you've actually done, documented, verified. Not what you've claimed, not what you've said in rooms where no one was writing it down, the record." I looked at the moderator, not at table 6. I didn't need to. 11 years ago, I was removed from a family business by someone who believed that being louder, faster, and more willing to cut corners was the same thing as being right. He was wrong. Not because karma is real, though I have complicated feelings about that, but because the record existed. It existed in a will written by a man who built something from nothing and knew the difference between someone who would tend to it and someone who would strip it. I was lucky enough that the record survived. A lot of people aren't. So build the record, document everything, because the people who try to take what you've built are always counting on the fact that you didn't. The room was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then the moderator moved to the next question, and the room moved with her. At table 6, my brother had gone very still. During the lunch break, James came to find me in the hallway outside the catering suite. "He read the letter," James said. "How'd he take it?" "His attorney took it. His attorney took it." He spent most of the keynote looking at his phone. James opened the folder he was still carrying. I also gave him this. It was a copy of a document I had seen for the first time 6 weeks ago, when I'd gone to clear out the storage unit I'd been paying $40 a month on since I was 23. Inside a box of my father's papers, underneath his immigration documents, and a stack of old supplier contracts, I had found a second letter, handwritten, dated 4 months before he died, when he had known he was sick, when he had been quietly organizing things. The letter was addressed to me. "Rachel, if things go wrong after I'm gone, and I know Daniel, and I know they might, I need you to have this." I never wanted to believe it. But I've been watching him for 2 years, and I've been watching you for 2 years, and I know who built what. I know who my company is. I also know I should have said this louder, in front of more people. I'm sorry I didn't. The warehouse on Burnett Road. The small one, the one we've been leasing out. I transferred the title to your name alone last year. It's in the deed records at Travis County. He doesn't know. I wanted you to have something that was just yours, that he couldn't touch, that couldn't be argued over. It's not worth millions, but it's worth enough to start. I love you. Use it well. Dad. I had sat in that storage unit for a long time after I found it. The warehouse had been worth, at the time of transfer, approximately $400,000. By the time I found the letter, given what had happened to property values in that corridor of North Austin, it was worth considerably more. I had already sold it quietly, 18 months into building Meridian, using it as collateral for the second investor round. I hadn't known, when I sold it, that my father had left it to me. I had found a deed in my name, assumed it was a clerical leftover, and used it. My father had known me well enough to know I wouldn't wait. What I was giving my brother now, through James, was not the deed. The deed was long resolved. What I was giving him was the letter my father had written, 4 months before he died, about watching both of his children for 2 years, and knowing clearly and without doubt what he knew. James had also attached to the copy of the letter a simple printed note. My words, not a lawyer's. 4 sentences. Dad knew. He made sure I'd be okay. You counted on me disappearing. I didn't. My brother left the conference before the afternoon session. Marcus Webb left with him. The woman with the leather portfolio left the portfolio on her chair. I never found out what was in it. I heard from a mutual contact 3 weeks later that Daniel had closed a deal to sell Nguyen hardware supply to a regional competitor. He'd been trying to sell for 2 years, apparently, and hadn't found a buyer at his price. He found one at a lower price. He moved to Houston. He did not contact me again. I have never contacted him either. What I did instead was what my father asked me to do in that letter. I used it well. The year after the conference, Meridian launched a program we called the Foundation Track, a subsidized advisory service for first-generation business owners, immigrant-founded companies, people who had built something real with limited access to the kind of financial guidance that people like my clients took for granted. We charged them 10% of our standard rate. We gave them the same service. Margaret came to the launch event. She sat in the front row in a yellow dress and drank sparkling water, and at the end, when I was taking photos with the first cohort of Foundation Track clients, she walked over and stood next to me without saying anything. I looked at her. She said, "Good." Then she went to get more sparkling water. Carl cried a little. He told me later he had allergies. I told him I know. He has worked for me for 11 years. At a team dinner 6 months after the conference, my deputy director, who had been with me since the 2nd year, raised her glass and said, "To Rachel, who built this." I said, "Margaret built the foundation. I built up." James said, "Can we eat now?" We ate. We always eat well at those dinners. I started the tradition of ordering too much food, because the first 2 years I was building this company, I did not always eat regular meals, and now that I can, I do not take it lightly. My father's photograph sits on my desk, not the one from my graduation that Daniel packed into the box with my coffee mug and my cactus. I left that one behind when I left. I got a new one printed, a photo I took myself at a family gathering when I was 19. Him at the head of a folding table, at a backyard birthday party, laughing at something someone said, completely unaware of the camera. He looks like himself. He looks like what he actually was, not the version that gets used in other people's stories about legacy and family names. I keep the cactus too, same one. It's about 3 times its original size now. Office plants, it turns out, do better when you stop neglecting them. 3 weeks ago I got a message through LinkedIn, not from my brother. From his daughter, my niece, who is 19 and apparently enrolled in a business program at UT Austin. She had seen the Austin Business Journal profile. They ran a follow-up piece, and she had looked me up. Her message said, "Hi. I know this is strange. I'm Daniel's daughter. I know what happened between you and my dad. He doesn't talk about it, but I've figured out most of it. I'm studying finance and I don't really know what I'm doing yet, And I was wondering if you ever did any kind of mentorship. I understand if the answer is no. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to James, who called me immediately and said, that is either genuine or a setup. I said, I know. What are you going to do? I thought about my father, who had trusted both of his children and had not been entirely wrong about either of us. I thought about Margaret, who took a chance on someone who showed up with a finance degree and nothing else, and was right about what she saw. I thought about the 19-year-old who was not responsible for what her father did, and who is, right now, just beginning to figure out what she's made of. I'm going to meet her for coffee, I said. Of course you are, James said. We met at a cafe on South Congress. She was nervous. She shook my hand too firmly, the way people do when they're trying to seem confident. She had her father's eyes and, it turned out quickly, none of his angles. She asked good questions. She listened to the answers. When she got something wrong, she said so. After an hour, I said, "Why do you want to work in finance?" She said, "Because numbers don't lie if you read them right. My grandfather always said that." I looked at her for a moment. "He did," I said. "He really did." I offered her a summer internship on the way out of the cafe. Not out of sentiment. Not out of some desire to claim something from my brother's life. Because she was sharp and earnest, and because my father would have wanted someone to give her the chance to find out what she could do. She started in June. She's good. She found an error in a cash flow projection in her first week that made James say, "Okay, yes, she's staying." She works hard. She asks questions, and then goes away and thinks about them before asking follow-ups. She eats lunch at her desk when she's deep in something, and then gets up and takes a walk around the block because she says it resets her brain. She does not remind me of her father at all. She reminds me of me, which is, I think, the part my father always knew. That the thing he built, not the company, not the warehouse, not any document filed in Travis County, would keep growing as long as someone was willing to tend to it. Not because of the name on the door, because of who shows up and what they do when they get there. If you've ever been handed a box and told you're done, please leave a comment. I read every single one. And if someone in your life saw what you were worth before you fully believed it yourself, tell me about them. Those people deserve to be named. Like and subscribe if this story reminded you that what you build can't be taken by someone who never understood it in the first place. And share it with someone who's in the early part, the hard part, who needs to know that the record always catches up. You're not done. You're just not there yet.